The night was colder than anything she had ever known. Snow fell from the dark sky like endless white dust, covering the land in silence. A woman walked alone through the storm, her feet sinking deep into the snow. In her arms she held a small baby, wrapped in torn cloth, the child's breathing weak and shallow. Her lips trembled as she whispered to the child, "Stay with me, my love, stay awake." But the baby's tiny chest moved slowly, each breath thinner than the last. The wind screamed like a living thing, pushing against her body, trying to take both mother and child into the endless dark. She pulled the baby closer to her chest, trying to share her warmth, though her own body was freezing. Every step was pain, her shoes filled with ice, her hands numb, her eyes stinging from the storm. She did not know how much longer she could walk, but she refused to stop. If she stopped, the snow would bury them, and her baby would never see the morning. She kept walking, though her legs shook, though her tears froze on her cheeks. The world was empty, only snow, rock, and wind. But then, in the silence between gusts, she heard something new, a sound that was not the storm, not her own breath. It was soft at first, like a low hum, but growing stronger with every second. Fear struck her heart, because she knew nothing human could be out here. She turned her head, eyes wide, searching through the white haze. At first she saw nothing, only shadows of snowdrifts and twisted trees. But then there, in the distance, a dark shape moved against the storm. Her heart raced, her hands tightened around the baby. The figure walked slowly but with strength, tall and heavy, the snow bending under its steps. It was too big, too steady, to be a normal man. She wanted to run, but her legs were too weak, her body too cold. Closer and closer the figure came, until the storm revealed part of it. Metal glowed faintly on its body, as if armor covered its skin. The head was hidden beneath a hood or helmet, and two small lights shone like eyes. The woman's breath caught. This was not a man, not as she knew men. The baby coughed weakly. Breaking the silence, the figure stopped, only a few steps away. Now it did not move, only watched her with those glowing eyes. She felt her fear grow, but also a strange pull, as if this being was waiting, deciding. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "Please, help my child." Her words broke into the storm, but she was not sure if the stranger understood. The figure tilted its head slowly, almost like curiosity. Then, without a word, it stepped closer. Kneeling down in the snow, she trembled, unsure whether to trust or flee. But the stranger lifted one hand, covered in thick metal. The hand opened, and a soft light spread from the palm, warm and golden. The warmth touched her face, and for the first time in hours, she felt heat again. Baby stirred, letting out a small cry. Stronger than before, her eyes widened. Her heart almost stopped. Her baby was breathing better. She looked at the figure with shock and tears. Unable to speak, the stranger said nothing, only held the light closer to the child. The storm still howled around them, but in that small circle of warmth, the mother felt a fragile hope. Who was this stranger, walking through the snow on a night of death? Why did he carry such power, and why had he chosen to stop for her? Her fear was still there, but mixed with wonder. The figure finally rose to its full height again, taller than any man she had ever seen. It looked down at her, and then turned. Slightly, as if pointing a path through the snow, she hesitated, clutching the baby tighter. But then she realized if she stayed alone, her child would not survive. Her steps were heavy, but she followed. The stranger moved slowly, making sure she could keep up. Every step he took left a mark in the snow, wide and deep, and she placed her own feet inside them. With every step, the baby's breathing grew a little stronger, as if the storm itself could no longer harm them. Still, questions filled her mind. Was this being human? Or something else? Was he a savior? Or was he leading her to danger? Only the night knew, and the night was not ready to answer. But one truth was clear. The child had been fading, and now he lived. The storm wanted to take them, yet they walked on, and somewhere deep in her heart, the mother began to believe that perhaps this night would not be their last. The snowstorm howled like a beast that did not want to let them live, but the woman walked behind the stranger, her baby held close, her eyes never leaving the wide steps pressed into the white ground. The figure moved with calm strength, each step steady, as if the storm was nothing more than a whisper. His glowing eyes lit the snow in small circles, making a path where there was none. The mother's heart was filled with fear and wonder. She wanted to ask who he was, but her throat was dry, and her voice felt too small against the endless storm. Instead, she only listened, the crunch of his heavy boots the only sound other than the screaming wind. The baby stirred in her arms, warmer now than before, and she almost cried in relief at last. The figure stopped, turning to face her. He stood so close now that she could see the details of his strange armor. It was not like anything she had ever seen, not made of leather or steel. The surface shimmered faintly, glowing with small lines like veins of light that pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. The hood or helmet still hid his face, but the glowing eyes seemed softer now. The mother's breath came fast, her body shaking, though not only from the cold. She wanted to speak, to thank him, to beg for more help, but her fear chained her tongue. Then the stranger reached out a hand, not in threat, but in offering. His hand was large, covered in metal that looked both old and alive. It opened slowly, and inside the palm was a tiny shard of light. The light moved like fire, but without flame, dancing gently. The mother stepped back at first, but the baby cried out, weak but reaching toward the glow. She hesitated, her heart torn between fear and hope. Finally, she lifted the baby closer, and the light touched the child's skin. The baby shivered, then gave a soft, steady breath, a sound so sweet it made the mother's eyes fill with tears. The stranger's head tilted slightly, as if listening, as if satisfied. Still, he did not speak, not a single word. The silence made him feel less human. Yet the kindness of his actions made her doubt her own fear. Who would walk into the storm for strangers? Who would carry such power in their hands? She looked at him and whispered, "Why? Why help us?" But the storm swallowed her words. The stranger turned again, pointing toward the dark horizon. There, through the snow, she thought she saw faint lights in the distance. They flickered and disappeared, as if hidden behind the storm. Her heart raced. Was it a village, a camp, or something else entirely? The stranger began walking again, slower now, as if waiting for her to stay close. She followed, her steps heavy, her arms aching, but her hope stronger than before. Every time she faltered, the figure would stop, standing like a wall against the wind. It was as if he would not let her fall, not while the baby still breathed. Hours seemed to pass, though time meant nothing in the storm. Her mind drifted to strange thoughts. Was he a man of flesh under the armor, or was he only a machine? But when she looked at the tracks he left in the snow, she saw drops of red. Her eyes widened. Blood, warm and human, marked his path. This stranger was not unbreakable, not a ghost, not a spirit of the snow. He bled like her, he suffered like her. That truth filled her with both fear and comfort, because it meant he lived, and the living could still choose mercy. She wanted to ask about the blood, but her courage failed. At last, they reached a place where the wind grew weaker. A tall ridge blocked part of the storm, and in its shadow was the mouth of a cave. The stranger stopped at the entrance, turning back to her with a motion of his hand. It was clear he was offering her shelter. The woman stepped closer, clutching the baby tightly, inside the cave. Faint light shimmered on the walls, glowing veins of crystal reflecting in colors she could not name. It was beautiful, almost unreal, a place hidden by the storm yet alive with strange warmth. The baby sighed softly in her arms, no longer gasping but breathing in peace. She looked at the stranger again, her voice trembling. "Who are you?" For the first time, he moved his head as if considering her words. Then he placed a hand on his chest, over the glowing veins of his armor. No words came, but the gesture felt heavy, as if it carried meaning too deep for sound. The mother lowered her eyes, unsure, but thankful, for now. She did not care who he was, or what he was. All that mattered was that her child lived, and that in the heart of a storm meant to kill them, a stranger had appeared to guide them. Yet, as she sat inside the cave, listening to the storm howl outside, her mind whispered questions she could not silence. Why did he appear here? Why did he bleed? And why did he carry the warmth of light in his hands? The stranger had given her safety, but he had also given her mystery, and she knew, as her eyes grew heavy from exhaustion, that the answers to those questions would change everything, for her child, and perhaps for more than she could ever imagine. The storm outside raged on, but inside, the story was only beginning. The storm did not end with the night. Even as dawn tried to break through the clouds, the sky stayed dark and heavy. Snow drifted across the land like waves in a frozen sea, endless and cold. The woman stood at the edge of the cave, holding her baby close, her eyes fixed on the stranger who waited outside. He stood like a statue, tall and unmoving, his glowing eyes cutting through the mist. The storm bent around him as if he was part of it, yet untouched by its power. The woman wondered if he ever grew tired, if his body ached the way hers did. But if it did, he gave no sign. At last he motioned for her to follow. Her heart tightened, but she stepped forward, her feet sinking into the snow. The baby stirred, warmer than before, though still weak. The stranger turned toward the horizon, where the faint light of day fought the darkness, and began to walk. The woman followed, each step heavy, her breath sharp in the freezing air. Yet she felt safer than she had the night before. Every time the storm grew stronger, the stranger slowed his pace, letting her rest. Every time she stumbled, he stopped, standing guard until she could rise again. The land stretched wide, endless fields of ice broken only by black rocks and twisted trees. Strange lights flickered in the clouds, like veins of fire hidden in the sky. The woman shivered, not only from cold but from fear. She felt as if unseen eyes were watching them, as if the storm itself was alive. For hours they walked in silence. The only sound was the crunch of boots on snow and the soft breaths of the baby. The mother's mind filled with questions. Who was this stranger? Why was he here? Why had he chosen to help? But every time she opened her mouth to speak, the words froze in her throat. Still, the clues of his nature appeared slowly. When the wind roared too loud, he would lift his hand, and the storm would weaken for a moment. When she fell to her knees, too tired to rise, he would kneel beside her, resting his armored hand on the snow, leaving behind a glow that warmed her bones. And when she looked at his steps, she still saw drops of red blood marking the snow, proof that he was no ghost. At one point, she dared to whisper, "You are hurt." The stranger paused but gave no reply. He simply pulled his cloak tighter, hiding the wound. Yet the mother's heart grew heavier, for she knew he was not only her protector, but also a being carrying his own pain. The sun tried to shine through the clouds, but it was pale and weak. In its light, the stranger's armor gleamed like silver, the lines of glowing veins brighter than before. The woman stared at him, wondering what kind of world had built such a man. He looked both ancient and new, both human and something more. They reached a ridge, climbing slowly, their bodies fighting against the slope. At the top, the woman gasped, because the land below stretched farther than her eyes could see. The snow spread like a white ocean, but far away, shapes moved in the haze, dark forms shifting, fast and strange. Her fear returned in an instant. The baby whimpered, sensing her mother's fear. The stranger lifted his hand, signaling her to stay quiet. Then he stood at the ridge like a guardian, watching the shadows with glowing eyes. The woman held her breath. For a moment nothing happened, only silence. But then, one of the shadows leapt, moving with speed no human could match. The storm hit it, but she saw claws. She saw glowing teeth. She saw hunger. The stranger moved faster than she thought possible. His hand flashed, and a beam of light cut through the storm, striking the beast. The creature screamed, a sound that rattled her bones, then vanished back into the snow. The other shadows melted away. Watching but no longer daring to approach, the mother clutched her baby tight, her body trembling. The stranger stood still, glowing eyes fixed on the horizon. He did not chase the beasts. He only watched until they were gone. Then, without a word, he turned back to her, offering his hand, her fear mixed with awe. This being was not only a wanderer, not only a survivor. He was a warrior, strong enough to fight the darkness that ruled the land. Yet, he still bled, still walked beside her as if her life mattered. They descended the ridge, leaving the shadows behind. The snow grew deeper, the cold sharper, but the mother no longer felt only despair. Every step was a test, but every step brought them closer to something more, a purpose she did not yet understand. As night returned, the stranger led her to another shelter, a hollow beneath broken rocks. Inside, he set a faint light on the ground. Glowing like a small sun, the cave warmed. The storm's howl grew distant. The baby slept peacefully, his small face soft and calm. The woman watched the stranger as he stood guard near the entrance. His glowing eyes never closed, his body still like stone. Yet she saw the blood again, dripping slowly, staining the snow near his feet. Her voice broke as she whispered, "You are saving us, but who will save you?" The stranger did not answer, only raised his head toward the storm. The mother lowered her gaze. Holding her baby closer, she knew their journey was far from over, and she knew the path ahead would test not only her strength, but the stranger's as well. The snow whispered outside, carrying secrets through the night, and deep inside, she felt that their fates were now tied together. The stranger was not just a guide, not just a protector. He was something more, something the storm itself seemed to fear. The storm had quieted, but the silence was heavier than sound. The mother sat inside the hollow of stone, holding her baby. The small light the stranger had set glowing faintly beside them. For the first time since the journey began, she felt warmth that did not vanish at once. But peace did not last, for she knew that in the snow, something waited. The stranger stood at the cave's mouth, tall and unmoving, his glowing eyes fixed on the night. The mother noticed that even when the wind rested, he did not relax. His stance was sharp, alert, as if every shadow carried danger. And she remembered the beasts they had seen earlier, the claws, the glowing teeth. Her baby stirred, letting out a soft cry. She hushed him quickly, afraid the sound might travel too far. The stranger turned his head, the glowing eyes flashing once, then returning to the dark horizon. It was as if he too feared sound in this silent night. Then, she heard it, a crunch in the snow, faint but clear. It was not the storm, it was not her own breath. It was footsteps, heavy and many. Her chest tightened. Her arms wrapped tighter around the baby. The stranger lifted his hand, signaling her to stay back. His other hand moved slowly across his side, and from his armor came a long blade of light. Sharp and white as fire, the cave filled with its glow, and the mother's fear grew. The sound came closer, the snow shifting beneath unseen feet. A low growl cut the silence, deep and hungry. Then eyes appeared in the dark red, glowing, dozens of them. Her breath-caught creatures circled the cave, shadows with teeth that gleamed. The stranger stepped forward, standing tall against the pack. The creatures hissed and growled, their shapes twisting in the storm's haze. They were larger than wolves, their bodies thin and sharp, their claws long. The baby whimpered, and the sound seemed to pull the creatures nearer. Without warning, one leapt forward, jaws wide. The stranger swung his blade, and light tore the beast apart. Its body fell into the snow, hissing and fading like smoke. The others screamed, a sound that shook the ground. Then charged all at once. The mother pressed herself against the stone, clutching her child, her eyes wide with terror as the storm erupted into battle. The stranger moved like a storm himself, his blade flashing arcs of light. Each strike cut through the dark shapes, each step heavy and unyielding. But there were too many. For every beast he struck down, two more appeared from the snow. Their glowing eyes filled the night, surrounding him. The stranger fought without fear, but the blood dripping from his side grew heavier, staining the snow. The mother's tears fell as she whispered, "Please, hold on," the baby whimpered. His small cry lost in the roar of the fight. She wanted to help, but she had nothing, no weapon, no strength, only fear. Yet still she prayed, her eyes never leaving the stranger. One of the creatures broke past him, its claws reaching for the cave. The mother screamed, pulling the baby close. The beast lunged, but before it reached her, the stranger's blade cut it down. He had moved faster than her eyes could follow, placing himself between her and death. The pack hissed and circled, but now they hesitated. The snow was stained with the ash of their fallen, the light of his blade burning too bright. The stranger stood tall, his chest rising and falling, his armor cracked, his blood red against the white, but his eyes glowed fiercer than ever. The creatures snarled, but slowly they retreated, melting into the storm. Their glowing eyes faded one by one, until the night was silent again. Only the wind remained, carrying the smell of blood and smoke. The stranger lowered his blade, the light fading until it was gone. The mother's body shook as she gasped for breath. Her baby stirred, safe but frightened. She looked at the stranger, standing before the cave, his body wounded but unbroken. And for the first time, she saw not just a protector, but a man ready to give his life for theirs. He turned to her, his steps heavy, and though no words came, his silence spoke louder than sound. She understood. He had chosen to fight for her child, against the darkness itself. The stranger sat down near the cave's mouth, his head lowered. His hand pressed against the wound on his side. Blood still dripping, the mother moved closer, placing her baby on the ground beside her. With trembling hands, she tore cloth from her own clothes, slowly, carefully. She pressed it against his wound. The stranger did not stop her, only watched her with those glowing eyes. For a moment, they were no longer stranger and lost traveler. They were two beings fighting the same storm, tied together by survival. The baby's soft breath filled the silence, a fragile sound of life. The stranger leaned back, his body tired, but his eyes still guarding the cave. The mother whispered, "You saved us." Her voice shook, but her heart carried truth. The stranger gave no reply, only lowered his head slightly, and outside, in the endless snow, the dark eyes of the beasts still waited, watching from afar. The night was not won, not yet. The storm had tested them, but greater dangers still waited in the dark. The mother held her child close, her heart heavy with both fear and gratitude, and she knew, as she looked at the stranger's wounded form, that this journey had only begun. The beasts did not return that night, but their shadows still haunted the mother's thoughts. Every sound of shifting snow made her body tighten. Every whisper of the wind felt like claws scratching the dark. The baby slept lightly, breathing softly against her chest, and beside the cave's mouth, the stranger sat, his glowing eyes dim but watchful. Morning came, though it was hard to tell under the heavy clouds. The snow did not stop, the cold did not fade, but the light was stronger than before. The stranger rose slowly, his movements heavier, his wound still hidden under the cloth she had pressed against it. Yet he stood tall, his blade of light strapped once more at his side. He motioned for her to follow, and she obeyed. Her legs ached, her body weak, but she had no choice. She stepped into the storm again, clutching her baby close. Behind them, the cave grew smaller, fading into the sea of white. The journey stretched long, each step harder than the last. The mother felt her strength slipping away, but the stranger never let her fall behind. When she stumbled, he slowed. When she shook from the cold, he pressed his hand to the snow, leaving behind warmth for her. To rest, he was a silent guide, carrying no words, only actions. As the day passed, the land began to change. The white fields of snow broke into sharp cliffs of ice. taller than towers, shining in the pale light. The walls glimmered like glass, colors dancing faintly within them. It was as if they had walked into a frozen palace built by the storm itself. The mother gasped softly, her eyes wide with wonder, even in her fear. She could not deny the beauty. The stranger led her into a narrow passage between the cliffs. The air grew colder, but strangely, the silence was deeper, like the storm dared not enter. At the end of the passage, the walls opened into a vast chamber of ice. The ceiling arched high above, glowing faintly with veins of crystal. The floor was smooth, reflecting the light like frozen water, and in the center stood a raised platform. Carved as if by unseen hands, the mother's breath caught, for she had never seen such a place. The baby stirred, opening his eyes for the first time in days. His small hand reached toward the shimmering walls, and for a moment, she believed they had stepped into a place older than time. The stranger walked to the platform and placed his hand upon it. The ice beneath his palm glowed, spreading light through the chamber. The crystals pulsed with energy, humming softly. The mother held her child closer, unsure if she should be afraid or amazed. Then, without a word, the stranger gestured to her. He pointed at the platform, then at the child in her arms. Her heart raced. She did not understand, but something in his silence told her this was no trap. It was a gift. Hesitant, she stepped forward, climbing the platform slowly. Her arms shook as she laid the baby onto the smooth surface. The moment his body touched the ice, light spread across the platform, gentle and warm. The baby's breathing steadied, his small chest rising, stronger than before. Tears filled her eyes, rolling down her cheeks. Her child, who had been fading in the storm, was now alive with strength. The baby opened his eyes wider, his tiny lips curling into a soft sound, and the mother fell to her knees, whispering thanks. She could not shape into words. The stranger watched silently, his glowing eyes reflecting the light of the crystals. For a brief moment, she thought she saw something human in his posture, a memory, perhaps, or sorrow, hidden behind the mask of armor. But before she could speak, he turned away, as if unwilling to show more. She touched the ice gently, feeling the hum beneath her hand. It was not ordinary ice, it was alive with energy. She whispered softly, "What is this place?" But no answer came, only the echo of her own voice in the chamber. The stranger moved toward the far wall, where the crystals formed a pattern like a doorway. His hand brushed across the surface, and symbols lit up strange, beautiful, not of her world. The mother realized then that this place was no natural cave. It was built or left behind by something far greater than she understood. Her fear returned, but so did her awe. She looked at her baby, now breathing steady, his cheeks no longer pale. Her heart swelled with hope, but her mind whispered questions. Who was the stranger, and why had he brought her here? As night fell again, the chamber glowed softly with the light of the crystals. The storm outside roared, but within these walls, it could not reach them. The mother sat close to her child, watching him sleep peacefully, and for the first time she felt safe, truly safe. The stranger stood at the edge of the platform, unmoving, but she saw his hand press again to his side, hiding the wound that still bled. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Why are you doing this?" The words floated through the chamber, unanswered. The baby sighed in his sleep, his face calm. The mother's tears fell again, but these were not only tears of fear. They were tears of hope, of wonder, of a future she had thought lost. And though the stranger gave her no words, his actions told her all she needed to know. He had saved them again, and he would not stop. Not while the storm raged, not while the darkness hunted, not while there was still life in her child's breath, and not while the shelter of ice still glowed with hidden power. The chamber of ice glowed softly through the long night. The storm outside screamed, but its voice could not break through the walls of crystal. The mother sat beside her baby, watching him sleep peacefully for the first time in many days. Her heart ached with relief, but her mind burned with questions. The stranger stood at the far side of the chamber, silent as ever. His glowing eyes scanned the walls as if searching for something hidden. The faint light of the crystals reflected across his armor, showing cracks, showing blood dried dark against silver plates. The mother wanted to ask him again who he was, but fear and awe held her tongue. When morning came, the light within the chamber faded. The baby stirred awake, his eyes brighter than before, his cheeks warm with color. The mother smiled. Tears slipping down her face, she whispered, "You live, my love, you live." As she held him close, her gratitude turned toward the stranger. She wanted to thank him, but how could simple words carry the weight of what he had done? Instead, she stepped closer, her baby in her arms, and for the first time, the stranger turned fully toward her. He lifted his hand and slowly removed his hood. Her breath caught, her body froze, for beneath the armor, she saw not the face of a machine, not the mask of an alien, but the face of a man worn, scarred and tired, but human. His skin was pale from years in the cold, his hair dark and tangled. His eyes glowed faintly, not from glass or wires, but from something within. They were human eyes, yet touched by a light she did not understand. He looked at her with silence, but she no longer saw only mystery, she saw pain. The mother's voice shook as she whispered, You are one of us." The man gave no answer, but his gaze lowered, as if burdened by the truth. He pressed his hand to his chest again, where the veins of light in his armor pulsed, and she realized the glow was not only in the armor, it came from him. He walked slowly toward the platform where the baby lay. He pointed at the crystals surrounding them, then placed his hand on the wall. Symbols lit once more, strange but beautiful, flowing like water across the surface. The hum of the chamber grew louder, filling the air with a song of energy. The mother's heart pounded. She asked again, stronger this time, "Who are you?" The man finally spoke, his voice deep and rough, as if unused for many years. "I was left behind," he said. Her body shook at the sound of his words. He continued, slowly, each word heavy with memory. "Long ago, others came here, from the stars, from Earth. My people, your people, but the mission was lost. The storm took us. The beasts hunted us, and one by one, they fell." His eyes lowered, shadows of sorrow crossing his face. "I remained." The mother's lips parted in shock. She whispered, "You are human." He nodded faintly, but then shook his head. "Not fully, not anymore," he said. "The storm changed me. The crystals bound me. I survived, but I am no longer what I once was." The woman clutched her baby tighter. Her fear warred with wonder. This man had lived through what no one could. He had carried the strength of light within him, a gift or a curse from this frozen land. He stepped closer to her, kneeling so his eyes met hers. "You wonder why I saved you," he said softly. "Because once, I too was saved. A stranger took pity on me when all was lost, and that act of mercy became my path." His glowing eyes softened as they looked at the baby. "I could not let another life be taken by this world." The mother's tears fell freely now. Her voice trembled. "You gave him life." The man shook his head slowly. "The child has his own life. I only protected what was already strong within him." The chamber hummed louder, the crystals responding to his presence. He placed his hand upon the platform again, and the glow spread across the room. Symbols danced across the walls, showing images like memories, ships in the sky, men and women in armor, fire falling, and then snow swallowing it all. The mother gasped, for she saw glimpses of a story long forgotten. The man's voice grew softer. "Your child will grow in this world, but he carries more than you know. The storm fears him, as it once feared. May, his breath is hope, his cry is a future." The mother's hands trembled as she held the baby close, her heart filled with both fear and pride. The stranger, no longer faceless, stood and turned away again. His steps echoed in the chamber, heavy but certain. He pressed his hand to the wall once more, and the symbols faded into silence. Only the soft hum of the crystals remained. The mother whispered, "You are alone. The man paused, but did not look back. I was alone, he said quietly. Now I am not. And with those words, she understood their fates were now tied together. The storm outside raged louder. As if angry at the truth revealed, the mother held her baby tightly, the child's warmth steady against her chest. She no longer saw only death in the snow. She saw the spark of something greater. And in the man who had saved them, she saw not only a stranger, but the last remnant of a forgotten legacy. The revelation had come, heavy and unstoppable. Her child was more than a fragile life clinging to breath. He was part of a story written in the ice. And the man who saved them was the key. The storm could rage forever, but something new had awakened in the snow. The storm outside had not ended, but something inside the mother had changed. She no longer felt like a lost wanderer. She no longer believed she walked only toward death. She carried her baby with hope now, hope born from the stranger's truth. And in her heart, she understood that this journey was greater than her alone. The man, no longer faceless, stood tall at the edge of the crystal chamber. His eyes glowed faint but steady, his body heavy with wounds yet unbroken. The mother watched him, feeling both gratitude and sorrow, for she knew he carried a burden too heavy for one soul. When the storm calmed slightly, he motioned for her to follow once more. She gathered her strength, wrapped her baby tightly, and stepped into the snow. The ice cliffs behind them shimmered, fading back into silence as if hiding their secrets. And the world stretched before them, vast and endless. The journey continued. Day after day, the stranger led, the mother followed. The baby grew stronger with each step. Sometimes the man bled, sometimes he stumbled, but never did he fall. His will alone seemed enough to hold back the storm. At night, the beasts still circled, their red eyes glowing in the dark, but they never dared to attack again. It was as if they feared the child, as if they sensed something within him. The mother held her son tighter, whispering promises of a future she could not yet see. One evening, after many long days, they reached the edge of a great valley. The storm opened above them, and for the first time, stars shone through the clouds. The mother gasped at the sight, tears filling her eyes, for the stars reminded her of stories, of home, of a sky before the storm. The stranger stood beside her, his glowing eyes reflecting the starlight. His face looked tired, older than she had first believed. He placed a hand on her shoulder, a rare gesture, heavy with meaning, and then he looked at the baby. His expression softer than ever before. "This world will test him," the man said quietly, his voice low and rough. "But he will endure, as we endured, and one day he will bring light where there is none." The mother's heart shook at his words. She whispered, "You speak as if you will not see that day." The man did not answer, but his silence carried truth. His body was failing, his wounds too deep, his strength nearly gone. He had carried them through the storm, fought the beasts, given his warmth, and she understood his path was ending here. The mother's tears fell freely. "You cannot leave us," she whispered, her voice breaking. But the man only shook his head. "I was left behind once," he said softly, "but now I leave something greater behind." He stepped closer to the baby, kneeling down. The child opened his small eyes, looking at the stranger with innocent wonder. The man smiled faintly, though pain weighed on his face. "You will not remember me," he whispered to the child, "but the storm will always fear you." The crystals in his armor pulsed weakly. The glow in his eyes flickered. The mother reached for him, her hands shaking, but he gently pushed them away, his strength fading but his purpose clear. At dawn, as the first light broke over the valley, the man stood one last time. He removed his cloak, heavy and lined with faint glowing threads. He draped it over the baby, the warmth seeping into the child's small body. Then he placed his blade of light at the mother's feet, its glow dim but unbroken. "Carry him forward," the man said, his voice like wind through stone. "Let him walk where I could not. Let him see a future brighter than mine." The mother sobbed, clutching her baby, her tears falling on the cloak. She wanted to beg him to stay, but her heart knew it was too late. The man turned, stepping into the snow. His figure grew smaller against the rising sun, and when the light touched the horizon, his shape faded, vanishing into the storm. Only footprints remained, wide and deep, stretching into forever. The mother stood in silence, holding her child. Her heart ached with grief, but beneath the pain was a fire. The stranger had not died in vain. He had left his legacy in her arms. Her baby was alive, strong, and destined for something greater. She lifted the child high, his small cry echoing across the valley. The storm's howl seemed to falter, as if listening, and for the first time, the mother did not fear the snow. She saw not death, but the future. She whispered softly, "He saved us, he gave us tomorrow." Her baby stirred, his tiny hands gripping the glowing cloak. The mother's tears dried, her steps firm as she began the descent into the valley, for she carried not only her child, but the last gift of a man who had once been lost. The storm would rage again. The beasts would return. The world would test them. But she knew now, with every breath, that her baby would endure, because he was not only her son, he was the legacy of the stranger in the snow.